So, as some of you may know, for a good while now, I've been doing several Pokemon related challenges over the years of streaming on Twitch, be it a regular Nuzlocke or a Soul Link with a buddy, or even a more complicated self-made challenge like Rocket Lock. I've always enjoyed playing Pokemon in a semi-different way. I then somewhat realized that I've never done what the tagline of the series is. I've never truly caught them all. So over the past couple years, I've been slowly amassing the means of being able to play and stream every Pokemon generation. From the original Game Boy to the Nintendo Switch, my goal by the end of this series is to catch them all. Since this is a semi-recount of my experiences thus far, I'm going to overview not only some hints on the gameplay side, but I'm going to overview the options when it comes to hardware, which to some, amassing the hardware necessary for this challenge is the most difficult part, especially with how the retro game market is at the moment. First things first, on the hardware side, one would of course need at least two of any device in the Game Boy family. Aside from the Game Boy Micro, this can be a combination of any two DMGs, colors, or advances. There are modern alternatives these days with cheaper FPGAs, like the funny playing FPGBC, that has the bonus of having a rechargeable battery and a backlit screen, with more premium devices like the Analog Pocket and the Chromatic that bring modern comforts to the table, at a premium price. For those who want to have these games on the big screen, there's a couple of options that would allow near full functionality as the handheld. The Japan exclusive Super Game Boy 2 has a transfer port that would allow trading while playing with a Super Famicom or a modded Super Nintendo. This would also provide a more authentic experience to the Game Boy, as the Super Game Boy 1 is notorious for running original Game Boy games a bit too quickly, although for Pokemon this isn't really an issue. There is a mod that would remedy this minor issue, but there would still be the lack of a transfer port. Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 on the N64 offered the ability to play both Gen 1 and 2 games via the transfer pack. Along with other benefits, having two transfer packs and two separate controllers would allow trading between the two games. Playing on N64 is a bit slow compared to any other method due to Stadium 1 and 2 requiring the game to be fully loaded, or conversely, quick loading the game would introduce small loading hiccups during gameplay. Although this impacts Gen 2 more than Gen 1 if memory serves me correctly. Probably the second best method outside of a traditional handheld in my opinion, the Game Boy player alongside a soft or hard modded GameCube will provide enough versatility for 3 generations of Pokemon. Why would I recommend a modded GameCube over just using a Game Boy player startup disc? Simply put, the retro market has had a massive influence on many of the choices I've made while preparing for this challenge, and getting a Game Boy player disc with its current prices is insanely expensive for me. My childhood GameCube has been modded with a Xeno GC, which allows booting of burned mini DVD-Rs. On this mini DVD, I have a pretty old version of Swiss, but any method that allows booting into Swiss will suffice. Those that don't know what Swiss is exactly, don't worry too much about it. The important thing that this allows us to do is to boot into Game Boy interface. GBI is an extremely useful homebrew tool that essentially is the Game Boy player boot disk, but leagues better, and most importantly of all, free. GBI allows me to boot in a desired resolution, aspect ratio, although that's more important for GBA, alongside some extra scaling options, and this is only scraping the surface of what GBI can do. Some extra things I have alongside my particular GameCube is a Carby, which allows me to output the console to HDMI without any extra mods, alongside a handy 3D printed support, and a RAFnet adapter which allows me to connect any classic controller to my GameCube. This sure saves a lot of money versus buying a Hori controller, but these days there are modern recreations that apparently are pretty decent, if you really want to have that SNES/GameCube hybrid controller. Hopefully down the line I could upgrade my GameCube setup using the flippy drive, but for now this setup is completely fine. And if anything, I got an email the other day saying that the flippy drive should be shipping out soon, TM, hopefully. Besides the consoles, one of course would need the very important transfer cable. Do note that the transfer cable meant for the GBA will not work for trades between the first and second generation, and vice versa. So make sure you have the original Game Boy/Color version of the cable when trading. I saved the most important part for last, the games. Now for some this may be the easiest part or the hardest part depending on how powerful your wallet is. The most powerful wallets can manage to get either red or blue or all 3 games without any issue. As compared to Gen 2 games, the first gen isn't as expensive, but seeing as these games are nearing over 2 decades old, one would have to add in the possibility of having to replace batteries and doing general maintenance to ensure the game will run correctly. even if the saved batteries have been replaced in the past. My solution to this small dilemma was just using the Analog Pocket's open FPGA cores, an Easy Flash Junior flash card, and last but not least, a Game Boy Link & Load 32 with RTC from Inside Gadgets. Now, why did I decide to do this over just getting the physical cartridges? This was the easiest way for me to have access to the save files while also having the benefits of Pokemon Stadium's 1 and 2 box management system. For those who don't know, Pokemon games of the same generation are known for being extremely similar to the point that the first and second gen games can accept either game's save file without issue. This is how people these days are able to make homebrew multi-carts that can swap ROMs on the fly. This functionality essentially allows me to complete either red or blue and move the save files between each other without issue. This also works for gold and silver, although you still have the issue of needing to trade for those evolutions. And now for going on the special journey of completing the Gen 1 Pokedex. This can be done by just playing red and blue and doing the necessary trades. However, there is a third version that is notoriously not recommended for this challenge, Pokemon Yellow. I do like a challenge, so I chose Yellow as my main game. I figured that going through this game alongside the 3 starters would equal out the trials and tribulations that I would experience on this journey. It's honestly not too bad, at least it was pretty manageable for a regular Pokedex challenge, but I feel this may have been a lot more annoying had I done a LivingDex challenge, but not for the reasons you'd think it'd be. The box management system in Gen 1 is absolutely the slowest and worst thing about going back to these old games in my opinion. You don't get icons, so if you forgot what a particular Pokemon is because you renamed it, well, time to go through another menu to figure that out. You're also not allowed to look at any other boxes without switching, which switching has you save each time, so unless you're using a spreadsheet or a handy dandy online tool for organizing Pokemon, have fun looking through the hundreds of creatures that lurk in there. It was also fun figuring out that once a selected box is full, you're not allowed to catch other Pokemon. So imagine finally seeing that 1% encounter in this Safari Zone just to be told your box is full and so you're not even allowed to toss a Pokeball at it. This is where Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 come into play. By having my main yellow file on the Link & Load cart, I can still use it as if it were a retail game and insert it into the transfer pack. And let me tell you, using Stadium's box management is a godsend compared to moving Pokemon on the Game Boy. You can even have extra Pokemon on the Stadium pack itself, although note that Pokemon are tied to a particular save file, so you can't use this feature as a transfer between 2 games in a single transfer pack. It's also a bit surreal seeing the color schemes of some Pokemon in their low poly forms, although this must have been amazing back in the day. Also note that depending on your version of Stadium 1, if your Pokemon's nickname has a space in it, the game may just delete the latter half of the name when it communicates with the game pack. This happened to me, and this also apparently happened to Oni Plays. There's even a video that goes a bit more in-depth, and the person fixes this issue. Some hints and other knowledge I thought I'd share. Sometimes some routes that have rare Pokemon can be made easier by using a repel and a weaker Pokemon. For example, if there's a 1% encounter chance for a particular Pokemon, and they happen to be the highest level in the area, try to level match that Pokemon with one you've previously caught, and have them lead with a repel active. Now this may also take a while to actually encounter them, but with enough repels you're bound to only see that one Pokemon if there is an encounter. While at the Safari Zone, while there are technically other things you could do before deciding to toss a ball at a particular Pokemon, the best course of action is to just toss a Safari Ball. This applies to essentially every generation that had a Safari Zone, which is probably why there hasn't been one in a very, very long time. So, while trying to catch that elusive Chansey, just keep tossing balls at it. You'll get it eventually. Speaking of catching, the only useful and repeatable status that helps you with your catch chances in Gen 1 is Sleep. Paralysis does not do anything outside of maybe preventing the wild Pokemon from hurting you or itself when it gets confused or is struggling. Great Balls are also a prime catching device as they have a higher chance than even Ultra Balls because of Spaghetti Code. If you need to grind up a new party member, remember that traded Pokemon get boosted experience. Both Victory Road and the Cerulean Cave are really good spots to get a lot of experience. But seeing as these are endgame and postgame areas, you'll most likely be here in order to get the necessary evolutions for the Pokedex or LivingDex. Outside countlessly rematching the Elite Four, there are no other ways of rematching trainers for experience or money. At least in Gen 1, there is no friendship mechanic, so there's nothing to really lose when moving teams for grinding. My personal journey through the many Pokemon generations has been inspired by the many PokeTubers that have made similar videos about their own personal experiences. If you want to watch the uncut footage of my gameplay, check out my VOD channel, Joe VODs. I have also edited down the gameplay into a long play format on my other channel, Joe Light. Shoutouts to one particular YouTuber that really ignited this journey, Never made a website. Seeing their journey narrated out had me thinking that doing this myself will be pretty fun, and so I did, just in my own way. It also helped that they even made their own website, which was pretty hard to guess from their name. This site holds valuable information for those who want to do this challenge in the first, second, and third generation games. From route info to a walkthrough and a box management checklist, this site is a must-use for those wanting to go down this rabbit hole. I also use PokemonDB and Bulbapedia as I played in case I needed any extra information regarding level up moves, TM/HM compatibility, and any other lesser known info about these games. And now for a final thing I wanted to add at the very end of this video. The final cost of everything, or at least a mixture of what I paid and what some of this stuff is actually worth currently. And also a comparison for how much things would have been had I purchased these 3 games physically. Actually, now that I think about it, there was an extra way to do this challenge. I could have just used 2 3DSs with yellow, blue, and red, and my upfront cost would have just been a capture card for at least one of them. 3DSs are pretty expensive these days, so if you want a US one, let's add in to the what ifs using the Korean market prices via price charting.